Hey guys, welcome to the Inside UCLA, Inside USC Signing Day Spectacular. This is John Gold with the LA Daily News, Scott Wolf with the LA Daily News. Scott, let's start with USC. A shorter class, a smaller class because of the sanctions, but let's talk about the quality that's pretty much top to bottom in this USC class.
Yeah, they can only sign 15 recruits because of NCAA sanctions, but the unusual aspect is if you look at the rankings, say on Rivals.com, their star ranking right now is #1 in the country. So it looks like they're going to get a lot of quality guys, but they're not going to get a lot of guys total. So that's going to hurt them depth-wise, I think, eventually. But in terms of impact players, they should be kind of where they've been. I think one problem could be they won't be able to sign as many skill players in this class as they might need because they've got to focus on offensive linemen, defensive linemen. So that's going to be the biggest impact of the sanctions.
You know, so obviously those came down a couple years ago, so we kind of knew that they were going to happen in the first place. How is USC, I don't know, acted in advance? How have they prevent defense,
Right.
prevent defended, I should say,
Right.
these things from kind of blowing up in their face?
Well, I think the biggest thing they did was last year, Lane Kiffin signed about 28 guys, and a lot of them were mid-year guys, and he knew in advance these sanctions were coming, so he tried to bulk up last season, and that would kind of offset the depth issue. But, you know, they're limited to 75 scholarships overall the next 3 years, so it's going to have an effect at some point. For on the field, it won't in games necessarily because he only uses 45 guys in a game.
Agree.
But where it'll hurt him is practice. You know, I don't know in the next 3 years if they're going to have to reduce tackling in practice or things like they did his first year.
Yeah.
So, you know, the problem's going to be if they have injuries, really. I think in the next few years, you know, if Marquise Lee or Robert Woods gets hurt, they don't necessarily have a third guy right this second that can step up and replace them. So they're going to have to do a little juggling, I think. I mean, on the other hand, they've weathered this probation better than any school I've seen. I mean, Alabama was crippled, really, with similar sanctions. So, you know, they are doing a pretty good, decent job, I think, because they're in LA, because they're USC. So it's working out, but it is going to be a new world for them, and they're going to have to adjust to it.
Well, the trickle-down effect is, I think, what's most interesting to me. If they can only take 15 guys in this class, and they might normally take 25,
Right.
that's 10 other high-quality. I mean, USC is not taking scrubs,
Right.
so that's 1 through 25 is going to be good players. So if that means 16 through 25 are at different schools, you know, that's where I don't think it necessarily hurts USC. I think it more helps the rest of the Pac-12. And I think UCLA has benefited that in a way. Right now, I think there are 26 verbal commitments. They're in it for a couple extra guys come signing day. I know it's probably going to be a bonanza for you guys, for USC on signing day. But I want to talk a little bit about how UCLA and USC stack up for the same player, because one thing that's kind of interesting this cycle, there doesn't seem to be a lot of UCLA-USC battles. There's less, right?
I think there's 2 guys maybe that are going to UCLA right now that were offered by USC. So there haven't been a lot of battles. You might know this better than me, but I would guess part of the reason was Rick Neuheisel was in limbo.
Yeah,
a lot of
exactly
recruits
right.
had cold feet,
Yeah.
and they weren't guys that USC was going to go after necessarily
Exactly.
because UCLA had to scramble a little bit.
Yeah.
I think in the next 2-3 years you're going to see a lot more battles head-to-head now, because the guys on the UCLA staff, I think, want to go head-to-head after the local recruits. So I think it'll get a lot more interesting. But this year, there isn't that overlap that you normally see.
Yeah.
And the big guy, of course, is Ellis McCarthy.
Ellis McCarthy.
So they both wanted him badly. And, you know, he went to Cal, or committed to Cal, and then changed to UCLA. So he's the most noticeable and the most valuable guy, I think.
Now, when you look at the composition of these classes, you know, UCLA really needed to address certain positions. USC, it just seems year after year, you know, when you have a 5-star from 2008 and a 4-star from 2009, they're just, every single year, it just doesn't seem like there's that many gaps. You know, we thought that USC was going to be really down on the offensive line this year, besides Matt Khalil, and all of a sudden it's you know, one of the best in the country, all that kind of stuff. You know, are there depth issues, you know, throughout the field that maybe immediate concerns? I know Morgan Breslin might step in pretty quickly on the D end. He used to be.
I guess he was one of those guys
Yeah.
too. We were just talking about USC versus UCLA.
And he's an early enrollee, right?
Yeah, he's in school now. I think the big issue next year is going to be tailback. because Amir Carlisle
Interesting.
transferred to Notre Dame.
Doesn't happen very often at USC.
No.
Tailback you, huh?
Yeah, I think if they have any injuries there, they're going to have a little problem. Curtis McNeil and DJ Morgan will be the top two guys. But after that, if those guys are hurt, it's going to be a problem. And then, like I mentioned, receiver, George Farmer's there. He could probably step up, but he hasn't done much yet. And, there's going to be question marks behind the starting players. If you look at their starting lineup, it's very good. But once you get past that, then you might have some questions. But, again, this is in perspective. I'm sure Jim Moore would love to have the problems with the depth chart that Lane Kiffin is going to say tomorrow that he's got.
Yeah.
So it's all relative. I think Washington's actually benefiting from the scholarship limitations because two guys who probably are going to go there are Jordan Payton from Oaks Christian and Jaden Mickens, a receiver from Dorsey. And USC had commitments from both those guys and then dropped them.
Yeah.
And now they're going to fall in Washington's lap. And, Washington's probably done the most underhanded recruiting, I would say, by stealing Cal's staff.
Yeah,
and
Tosh.
now their players, getting Shaq Thompson to commit. Yep. So they've benefited the most of all this as far as I can see. And they almost got Eric Armstead at the last minute. So, they've, maybe Steve Sarkisian, since he was a USC guy, he's just, looked at who USC dropped closer than other coaches have. But they're going to benefit the most, I think.
Yeah. All right, guys, thanks so much for checking out the first installment of our Signing Day Spectacular. John Gold and Scott Wolf of the LA Daily News. We're going to come back to you a little bit later with some instant impact players who might be contributing to UCLA and USC sooner than expected. And then we might talk a little UCLA-USC basketball, even though that's probably a little too depressing.
I'm sure not many USC people want to talk about basketball.
I don't think many UCLA guys want to talk hoops right now.
Even when they're winning, USC fans don't want to talk about basketball, but that's okay.
That's what happens when you have Heisman winners, I guess. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching this installment. We'll be back pretty soon.